What's up YouTube? This is your everyday nerd here, Vincent. Today I am behind the camera because I'm doing my first figure review. Sorry it's taken so long to get these videos put out. I've had a lot of work that I've had to do. I went to Tennessee and Kentucky this past weekend, so I wasn't able to get any of the content that I promised last week, but I'm trying to get that all in this week. So I'm going to go ahead and do the figure review today. I'm also going to go ahead and because Batman and Superman's coming up, I'm going to do a discussion video about that and possibly a giveaway. And I'm still going to do the review about Division. I wanted to play it a little bit more just because I haven't had a lot of time with it before I started discussing it. But let's go ahead and get into what I'm going to discuss today. And today is going to be my first collectible figure that I ever got. As you can see, if you don't know what it's from, this is the two different Megazords that were part of Power Rangers Lightspeed Rescue. The reason why this was my first figure that I got was just for the simple fact that Lightspeed Rescue was one of my favorites when I was a kid, and I know when I was younger I really wanted this figure and I couldn't get it. And so when I finally got a job and I was making decent money, I was like, hey, I'm gonna buy it. And when I got it, I was like, this is the best figure in the world. And I was so happy. I did have, when it got it, it did have the original box, but the box was really busted up. But I was able to get these all for a really great deal. So I'm going to go ahead and pull some of these out. The whole gimmick of the show was like everyone was part of like actual service, like an actual service, and that's what I really liked about the show, is like there wasn't some mystical power or something that like magical that was giving them powers. Even though some of those seasons are cool, this was kind of a realistic of, oh, if Power Rangers were real, this is how it would be. So let me go ahead and pull out some of the individual Zords from the trains that they were coming in. And let me go ahead and get this. Let me go ahead and change the camera. So these are the originals, like the main Megazord for the series. They're all a pretty decent size. They have some of the die-cast metal. And if I remember correctly, I believe that these are the original molds from the Japanese versions. They don't have any stickers. I think the only thing I'm missing from this set is the sword, and then I'll think of some of the gold pieces that went on top of the trains, and then the gold pieces that went on top of the, basically it's like a water truck. But other than that, it's a complete set. It's actually in really good condition. I was surprised when I got it, since it was missing a good bit of the detail stuff. But still, as a Zord, like quality wise, is really good. I'll go ahead and break it down Zord by Zord for y'all. This is the Red Ranger, the leader Zord. Basically, it's a fire truck, even though together these could be a fire truck together. But this is a fire truck. The main gimmick for the Zord was that the arms could pop off, come out, and you had these giant ladder things right here. I think they used this a few times in the show. Basically, they used it to, like, if they had to go into a building, they popped it into the building, and this was like the ladders, but it also made the fists. But as a gimmick by itself, it's pretty neat. So, other than that, that's all it does, besides what it does for the Megazord. So we're going to go ahead and close this and put this off to the side. Let's go to number 2, which was the Blue Ranger Zord. And like I said, fire truck is kind of similar thing. What this Zord did was it had like little hydro cannons on top, and it would shoot water out of the cannons to put out the fires and whatnot. If I had those pieces, I could kind of show what it did. Other than that, that's all that it did in the show. It's a pretty solid Zord piece. It makes up the legs of the Zord, so it doesn't really have a whole bunch of functions, but still a good piece just for the whole figure set. The next Zord was, I would say it's kind of like a helicarrier, a little helicopter. This is one of my favorite ones just because of its modern but futuristic at the same time. And this is the Zord that did all the work. So a lot of times you watch the Power Ranger shows, if you did watch Power Rangers, and the Zords would kind of like all fly in the air, even if they couldn't fly to get put together. And this is what made it realistic, where this Zord basically would go in, he'd have a little crane, he would pick up all the other Zords and put them together, and then he was the last piece. He dropped down on top and had the head. So then like the head's tucked away in here. But what's really cool about this is these pieces right here. This is where all the thrusters are, and you can move them around, pose it a little bit. So if you're trying to get some poses, if you had it like on a little stand to show it's flying, you can have it moving around. So this is, out of all of them, this has the most posability, and it's one of the coolest ones in my opinion. So we'll go ahead and set it aside. The next one would be the Yellow Ranger. The Yellow Ranger kind of had a dump truck a little bit. Basically, Yellow Ranger would, if there was stuff in the way, they would use the Yellow Ranger's claw that came out the back right here, pick up junk, move things out the way. Sometimes it would attack the enemies if it was just by itself, but other than that, didn't do much. But it's still a cool little truck. Let's see, this is just regular plastic right here, but it's a nice little chrome feature on there. And it really sucks that I don't have the stickers for it. But I've seen places where you can get repo labels and re-put it on the Zords, and that way you can get the original looks that the figure had. But let's go on to the last Zord, which was Ambulance, and looks just like Ambulance if you look at it. And what this Zord did in the show is it would pop this open, and it would move all the cars out the way. So if they were about to have a big fight, she would back it up, go down, all the little cars would drive in here, drive it off, take it away, put them somewhere so that way you can come back and fight. Other than that, it's Ambulance. It doesn't really do much after that. So we can go ahead and get into the combination. So it always would start out where these two kind of pull up next to each other, and they would lift themselves up and they become the feet of the Megazord. And then this pops off, and then this gets pulled out in the back. Let's see. Yeah, so it gets pulled out. So there you have it. You have the feet of the Megazord. Pretty simple. Then the next part is the Blue Ranger with the blue fire truck that I call it. I'll go ahead and do that again. But basically split in half, rotate this forward, and that was the legs. And how it got into here was the Green Ranger would pick it up from this formation, lift it up, the legs would drop down, and then he would drop them down into the two Megazords, which I think I have backwards. So let's go ahead and switch those around, drop them in there, and that's the legs. Now, by itself, this was actually a Megazord combination where they had the fire hoses on top, and it would just walk around and shoot water. So if this couldn't reach anything by itself, they would drop it in here, and this would like hose down buildings. So by itself, this is pretty cool. For kids, that added like a little bit more replayability. When I was a kid, when they were like, oh, all these different Megazord modes, all these things you could do, I'd be hyped for it. So, in my opinion, this is a good Megazord mode just to give kids something extra. Next part would be the Red Ranger. So, same thing, the Green Ranger would pick this Zord up, and like everything would come apart and fall into place. So this comes down, and then this pops up, and that's going to start making the torso. And then the arms would come around, and this drop down. And you would pull the arms to get the fist come out, because the way it is set up like this. You'd have to pull it all the way, just so you can get this piece out, and then you push this up, and then you get like the wrist with the fist right there. So that way it doesn't look odd where you're just pulling that out. This way it gives actual length to it. So same on this side. Do it like that. And the Green Ranger would pick this one up too and drop it down on top. Let's see. And that would make the torso. So I'm going to pull my camera up a little bit. And that'd be the torso of the body. And then the last one would be the Green Ranger. And since he was dropping it, the cables would be connected, and that's where he would start to drop down and get to the top. And then when he would drop down, these would kind of come up, the head slowly comes up, and then these get folded, and then these folded up as well. And then this would drop down and finish off the body. Now, go ahead and look at it from distance. As you can see, it's a pretty solid Megazord. From other Megazords that I've seen, that I've compared it to watching YouTube videos and whatnot, or Zords I've had in the past, this is considered one of the smaller ones. And if they were doing all the Megazords to scale, it makes sense, just because if you're building stuff from current technology, or you have advanced technology or money to do it, then it would seem like, oh, this would be a decent size for a Megazord, just for a realistic show. Now, detail-wise, if you look at his face, let's see if we can get it to focus on here. But what I always thought was really cool was, if you look at his face, he looks like a firefighter. He has like a little, like, it's like he almost has a beard. He has the visor on, but he also has a beard. This is kind of like a little headset he can talk to people at. So he looks like a rescue worker, and that's what's really cool to me about it. Just the detail of his head, because a lot of times the faces of the Megazords, you get a human face, and then they have like an animal crest around it, or they have like a visor and like a face guard, and it's just a weird robot face. This actually humanizes the Zord, so it gives it that more like realistic feel to it. It's like, oh, this is a person that's gonna help you. Now, if I had this sword with it, I could show you with the sword, but I don't have it, and it kind of sucks, but it doesn't defeat what you can do with it. In my own opinion, because this is supposed to be a rescue Zord, honestly, I don't think it needs a sword. Just because he could easily he could still use the same fist gimmick, pop the fist out. That was one of the moves. He put his fist out and then kind of go punch him side to side with the fist. That was a really cool gimmick in the show. But I think by itself it looks really cool. Then another touching feature is the belt. In the show, when the blue and the red combine together, the belt is in one position and then spins around, and it's supposed to kind of lock it together. And I really like that. Like, that was kind of like a simple touch they added to this figure. It doesn't lock into place. It doesn't do anything else but just spin. But it's still kind of cool. Like, if I know when I was a kid, if I played with toys and I watched the show with it, I wanted to recreate the action or that changing sequence with that figure. But other than that, it's a really nice figure. We're going to go ahead and turn around. Especially on the back, everything's kind of streamlined. You have like this little feature thing right here, but other than that, it's very streamlined. I've seen other Zords where it's streamlined and then you have this giant chunk of whatever the Zord is on the back, or there's giant chunks and kibble everywhere. So because of how simple this figure is, it just makes a nice figure, and especially with all the movable parts and what it could do, it just makes it just a little bit more special in my eyes. Let's see. Other than that, that's about it that the Zord can do. But what I'll go ahead and do is I'll go and set this aside, and we'll talk about their carrier Zords. The carrier Zords were really basically like they were trains. There was a train track that ran through the city. When the Zords needed to come out, the trains would basically come out and stop on the side, pop these open, and the Zords would kind of drive out. In later episodes, this actually became a Megazord itself. And from what I've seen from other videos, when I did research, a lot of each train represents a different type of train. I don't remember off the top of my head what all of the trains represent. I know this represents like an older style train and whatnot. But other than that, it's just a whole bunch of different trains. So we'll go ahead and get into the combination for it. So what we'll go ahead and do is we'll go ahead and close all the compartments up for each of these Zords. Now, they had a sixth Zord, which was a train. It was a spaceship, but it was like the head of the train. And it was when they started going into space and having space battles. It was basically a spaceship that plugged into the front of the Red Ranger, and they would launch it into space, and then that's when they had their mid-season Zord change. I don't have those Zords at all, just for the simple fact that I wasn't interested in getting it. It is a cool figure, but it looks flat, and I really didn't like it. But it's also compatible with this train as well. It fits in the same compartments as these Zords. I think there's this Zord and that other Zord is about the same height. And then the Solar Max Megazord, that's the name of it. I don't have that one just because it was a little bit harder to find complete with like all the parts to make it. But other than that, just having this set is really good. So what we'll go ahead and do is we'll start with train number 3, which is kind of like a beefier piece. And that's just for the simple fact that this is the torso. So what we'll go ahead and do is we'll go and pop this out in the middle. Fold this front, and this makes the chest piece. And then we'll fold the connector bits out, and we'll set it to the side. Next, we'll go ahead and do the legs. So we got same thing, pink and yellow are the legs, and it's kind of weird. Like it's always the girl Rangers always was weird bits of the Megazord, but it's changed in recent years, so we're not going to make a big deal about it. So here's the legs. Legs are put together. This one's a pretty tall Zord compared to a lot of Zords. It's one of the bigger ones. So we're going to pop this up, and we're going to go and pop the Green Ranger Zord on top. So as you can see, this is already pretty big. I might have to move it back in a moment. So, but for the time being, if I get my camera right, we'll just move to the side so I can show you the arms. So the arms, we'll do Blue Ranger's Zord first. The front comes off, and we're going to slide the arm in to make it a little bit shorter and pop this together so that way you get your joint, and then you'll never forget what side this, because the hands are the same, so it gets you the thumb and it actually opens up. And this was always really cool because a lot of the Megazords just had like fists like this and they were a solid piece. This gave it like, oh, it actually has hands, it can hold things. So we go ahead and put the fist on there, and then we take this piece right here, which was the front of the train, and it pops on the side right here. So we're going to set that down. Same thing with the Red Ranger. Red Ranger's Zord did the exact same thing. You pop the front off, see the fist, pop this down, and pop the connector piece out to the side. And then we put the train piece on the front. So those are both the arms. So now we're going to move this back a little bit. See if we can see it. Yep. And then we're going to go ahead and pop the arms on. The responsibility of good connector ports. Drop the headpiece down and reveal the eyes. Now, comparing to the other Zord, it's twice as high. It's a big piece. When I had this displayed, it just looked massive compared to having these, and I had other like Transformer figures standing around it and whatnot. But it's a massive piece. And with massive figures like this, you don't get as much articulation out of it. I think the only thing that this Zord can do is rotate its arms around, which isn't bad, because a lot of times these bigger Zords, they were just there for like a big final finisher for like a lot of the other monsters. And same gimmick with the whole idea that it was a realistic TV show. With the train, the same thing was that the trains kind of did fly, but it made sense where they went down the track kind of angled up. They had to get to Lightspeed, pertaining to the show Lightspeed Rescue, but they would go so fast, they would jump off the ramp, they'd be in the air, and then they would detach and then reattach in the air, and they would use like the boosters in the back of the trains to kind of adjust themselves. And what was really cool is to show the realism is whenever they flew in the air, there was something in the air too. There'd be like a plane flying nearby to show like, oh, we're in the air and we're going to combine. And then as soon as they combine, they kind of like thrust down and land back on the train track. And then they do their final finisher, which would always include the fronts of the trains. So this one was like, the top left side was always a turbine cannon, and then on the right side, it was like missiles. So they either would do it on the shoulders, or they would come off from the shoulders and put them on the hands, and they would do like a hand attack with the same thing. I honestly don't know why that would make sense. If it works in one place, why do you have to switch it up? But that's TV. You never know. What's really cool is Even though I don't have the stickers for either of these, the train did have the stickers on the side, just because if you didn't put the stickers on, it didn't have the numbers. But what was really cool is on this side, these are all painted in. You didn't have to have stickers for this, and that's a nice little touch, because a lot of time I know because Power Rangers is basically a translation from Super Sentai in Japan, that a lot of times they would just skimp out on like, oh, missing paint or whatnot, and especially the toys nowadays that they give out to kids, which is really sad. I'm gonna try to do a review on some of the toys that I have now, but this is a nice touch. If only they kept like doing the Japanese molds and bringing those over. Even if they do cost a little bit more, they are worth it because they are better quality. But this is, in my opinion, this is a nice figure. Would I recommend this to a collector? Yes, I would, just because this is still considered like one of the, when this figure came out, when they were still sharing the molds to make the toys with Japan, and these are just really good quality. Like, this show came out when, let me try to think. I think I was in like 4th grade, I think. And that was a long time ago, and now they're still in really great condition. Even missing stickers and missing certain items, that's forgivable. Certain sets you don't want to be missing items. This one mainly is just missing like the little gold pieces, and I know those go for a lot if people sell them by themselves because people are missing them, or like kids chewed on them when they were younger. Especially those swords. If you had a sword from any Megazord as a kid, it was like that flimsy plastic, and you could find it with kids just chew on it just because it's soft. But with this set, I don't mind missing the sword. And this piece, like missing the tops of the trains, it's not a big deal to me. I know like hardcore collectors, they'll make a big deal about it, especially with stickers missing, because it's missing stickers from here, from right here, and then just stickers from the shoulders, the arms, the numbers, the sides of the legs. It's missing a lot of stickers. Now, if all the stickers are on there, it makes it look way shinier, and it gives it that little bit extra detail. But what someone could easily do with this figure, and I've seen it done before, this has the grooves where you can black wash it and fill all the grooves with black paint. It will bring out all the details, because the details are there. It's just you would put a sticker over it. So if anything, you could black wash it, and if you did that, it would actually give you a more realistic look that the show had, because the show had all the Zords and there was like deep black lines and whatnot. So if anything, black washing this figure would be really good if you're just collecting it to keep it. Other than that, this is about it. This is all it does. It doesn't have any, like, especially this one doesn't have any huge action features that I can think of that I remember at the moment. But for me, a lot of the figures I collect are I have them as like standing pieces. Like, I'll put them with like other figures that I have and just have them there looking kind of cool and bad. Like, oh, excuse me. Sorry about that. Have them looking really cool just sitting on the shelves and whatnot. A lot of times, like, I think when I got this set, I had it with some other Transformers that I started collecting, and I had them where the Zords were there and the Transformers were kind of around it, just because I really like, I'm really big into cars that transform or vehicles that transform. Animals, not so much. There are certain figures that I like that are animals that transform, but I'd prefer to collect the vehicles that transform. Other than that, I think that's about it for this review. If you can get your hands on one, I would say go ahead and get it. I was able to get this set a couple of years ago for a really good price. I got them together. Usually, if you have it complete for each one, it's like $100 a piece, and I think I was able to get it for less than $120 for both of them together, and I think that's just because the box they were in was junky, and then they're missing their stickers. But as for the Lightspeed Rescue toy line review, since I was missing two figures, don't have a complete toy line, but for the base toy line, that's all I have to say for today. But I'm going to say it again. Coming up, I'm going to have some other videos up for y'all. I'm going to have the discussion for the Division that's coming up pretty soon. I'm going to have a discussion for Batman vs. Superman because that comes out this week. And like I said, I'm going to try to do a giveaway. So if you're interested in giving the giveaway, because I'm gonna give out pretty cool prize for it, go ahead and like, subscribe, share this video with friends. If you have other friends that are nerds, download, because a lot of people won't admit like, oh hey, I collect Power Rangers stuff. Just because I like the figures, they were pretty neat. Other than that, that's all I have for today. So this is Vincent, your everyday nerd, signing off.